Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is always morning in the land of the Astrolabe. You are watching the Astrolabe, the #1 afternoon morning show on the internet, brought to you by King Pilled. This episode is sponsored by the King Pilled Discord, as usual, the best secret society on the internet. If you'd like to join and be a part of the elite crew at the King Pilled Discord, you can go to kingpilled.com. That gets you access to a fantastic, tight-knit community of loyal listeners and supporters of the show, and like-minded folks who are focused on developing community and building things in the real world to get us through the coming time of strife and crisis. No matter what happens in November, things are going to be tumultuous. Let's say it'll be a time that is can definitely be defined as crisis, and the only way that we're going to get through it and grow through it and come out the other end better off than we entered it is through our local communities, focusing on creating groups of friends that you can trust with diverse skill sets, and of course very good memes. The meme thread is one of my favorite channels in the Discord. It is always popping. Probably gets the most activity of all, honestly. And that is, what's the opposite of damning with faint praise? It would be like, lauding with great insults. I don't know. Anyways, and it also, by joining that Discord, you also are able to support what we're doing here. I had to dial back some of the other things that I was doing because, the #1, the response to the Astrolabe has been so great. You guys have been, it warms my heart to see you guys in here in the chat every day, and also the people reaching out, talking about how good the show is, how much they enjoy it, how it's good for keeping up on stuff, and also sending content for me to include. It helps the job very much. So if you want me to keep doing this, if you appreciate it, you want to show your support, the best way to do that is joining the King Pill Discord. You'll honestly get the most for your money that way. You can also send a super chat. We very much appreciate those because every single stream gets demonetized. I cover all the important stuff, and so YouTube doesn't want you to know about it, so they demonetize them and limit the reach. So if you can like the stream and share it, send a super chat, all of these things, even just posting in the live chat is helpful. The more activity we can get on the channel, the bigger we can grow it, the more people we can get exposed to, and the easier it is to spread the message of no fucking blackpilling. Lastly, here at the beginning of the housekeeping, I'll just say you can also go to buymeacoffee.com/kingpilled. Very much appreciate all those of you who have done that. And actually, it just reminded me, yesterday, I discovered, I'd set this up a long time ago and then forgot about it, but a helpful follower of mine indicated or pointed out to me that the Bitcoin tipping feature is live on Twitter. So if you'd like to send your boys some based currency, then you can use the Bitcoin tipping feature. There's also a Venmo tipping thing on there. Just go to Twitter, go to King Pilled. Real King Pilled is the handle, and you can support the show and keep us doing this. All right. So today, as I promised, we're going to cover the second attempt made on our president's life. And one thing I thought about talking about it yesterday, and decided that It's the first time I've really had to think about this that much, but I decided that this is not a breaking news show. This is this is like an analysis and entertainment show. So when there's big news that could have a lot of different, the right when the news first breaks is often when there's a huge blow up of misinformation. In fact, one of the things that I would have talked about has since been revealed to be misinformation. So there was a potential connection between the two shooters, but it turned out that the source for that was a page that had been edited that day, and it was obviously someone trying to spread misinformation. So when there's a big breaking news thing, I'll probably give it a day or two to sort of settle out and start having some of the actual facts of the matter become a little clearer. So you may have already heard a bunch of analysis on this. If you've been following all the different shows and stuff that I have, then you've probably heard a good bit of this. But I want to focus on some of the things that I've seen a little bit less covered, and then also there's some takes on who might be behind it that I've found very interesting. So we're gonna get into that. First of all, we gotta watch a funny one. We gotta watch a funny video. Get our minds right for the very beginning. And then I've got a couple other updates on some other stories and one funny story yesterday from Jeremy Kauffman absolutely mogging the FBI. So let's get rocking and rolling, and then we'll round it off with some funny Mark Andreessen and Elon Musk content, and interesting update to the Twitter algorithm. For those of you who are trying to grow your Twitter accounts, I know there's quite a few of you here. I've got some good information in this thread that should help you out. I learned a little bit from it that I'm going to apply to my own posting. So we'll get to that here in the back half of the show. But first of all, the funny one. Bro got hit so hard he got turned into a South Park character. I went into this kind of not quite sure what I was going to expect, and wound up with like the type of laugh that makes you blow a snot bubble. So I'll share this with you guys now.
Hey, y'all guys. So you see this? I'm going to pull this on the count of 3. 1, 2. Whoa! Ah! He came back and hit me in the face! God darn it!
Oh, man. I've been there, man. I've been there. I don't know what you were thinking. Was that a 25-foot tape measure? He let it go before he finished the countdown. Oh, man. Getting smacked across the face with one of those would be the worst. Or is the worst, I could say. So yesterday, Jeremy Kauffman, one of the posters behind the LP New Hampshire account, or at least he has been in the past. I'm not totally keeping up on Jeremy Kauffman stuff, but he's a good guy with good posting, and he's friends with good people that I know. So I appreciate him. LP New Hampshire account tweeted something that I definitely would not have tweeted. Something regarding the sitting vice president and having certain things done to her. Just not something, even on new Twitter. I don't care what your platform is. I'm not going to tweet something like that. If you want to do that, if you want to bring that shitstorm down on yourself, you are more than welcome to. I'm not going to share the tweet here for obvious reasons, but Jeremy went and got himself a little visit from the FBI.
Hey, how can I help you?
Hey there, is it Jeremy?
Yeah.
How are you?
Who are you?
I'm Agent O'Donnell with the FBI.
Can you give your full name, please?
I'm Agent O'Donnell with the FBI.
Is that sufficient to identify as the only one O'Donnell affiliated with the FBI?
In New Hampshire, yes.
Could you please state your full name, sir?
Could you please stop recording?
No. It's First Amendment right.
Okay.
What's your name, sir?
Could you stop recording?
Absolutely not. You can show me your name and identification, or I'm going to go back inside my house.
Okay.
I don't really want to broadcast my.
Oh, this is going out right after you.
Oh, he doesn't want to broadcast his identity. Oh, imagine that. Imagine not wanting your identity broadcast on the internet when you find yourself in an embarrassing situation. Huh.
You guys walk away.
So that's why I'm not gonna.
So you can show me your name and ID, you can walk away.
We just want to talk to
I'm not going to talk to people who claim to be federal agents unless they can show me identification.
Okay, well, You see our badges.
I need to see. Is your full name on that badge?
No.
I'd like to see something with your full name, or I'm not going to talk to you.
I prefer you not to broadcast it.
This will be going online as soon as you walk away.
All I want to do is talk to you about the post that was made, and if you happen to be the one that made it.
I want to talk to you about you guys coming here. Say you make a salary of, I don't know what, low 100K? You guys making six figures? Factor in 50% expenses, overhead, maybe 100% expenses. Talking about burning a couple $100 an hour just here, let alone all the time you guys are spending to investigate something that you know is not against the law, right? Like you're familiar with. So then why would you come?
Because we wanted to make sure that there weren't any.
No, you're coming because you're part of a regime that does this kind of thing when you know laws aren't being broken, and that's an embarrassment, man. Didn't you guys read the Constitution? Do you not believe in America? Like, how do you do your jobs and go home?
We appreciate it.
You're walking away. Because nothing we did is against the law, and you guys are fuckheads that try to act like bullies. And I hope you go home and are embarrassed. You can't even say your name on camera because you know that what you're doing is embarrassing. You know Americans that believe in the Constitution think you're laughable. And you go home.
There's this guy's getting paid low six figures, which I don't even know if he's going to be that much for this guy, and he can't even get a shirt that fits. He's got to squeeze himself into the schmedium.
Home and you think about what you did today. Go home and think about it, you cowards. Drive away. Drive away.
Thank you for your time.
You're not welcome. You should be embarrassed. Embarrassing. You guys are embarrassing.
Note that the plate there was not a federal plate, and someone did a little digging and looked in the state records, and there is no record of that license plate. It's a thing apparently from passing on recklessly whatever I read on the internet. They have ghost plates that because they don't want to identify themselves as being FBI agents if they don't want to. And so so they drive around with ghost plates, which is just, I mean, yeah, I'll just let it keep going. $23.1 million views. Got shouts out from a lot of very good people. But my take on it was, I thought, man, imagine being these guys and pulling the short straw. Oh, man, I got to go confront the guy who regularly tweets bangers. I'm definitely going to be a meme by the end of the day. And, you know, Mr. Muscles over here is it was the meme yesterday. I saw some good ones going around from that. Someone replied and said, Real Will Harder on Twitter said, are you going to post this on the internet? I'm going to post this on the internet the moment you leave. And this was what it made me think of, this meme right here. This is what those guys look like. They're just sitting there like, oh, man. Really? This is what I signed up for today? Everyone on the internet is going to be digging into my name. I'm going to be getting phone calls. This is good. Make these guys hate their jobs. The vast majority of people are not true believers. And there are many very good FBI agents. There are plenty of them that are in there that aren't happy about the state of things, and many of them are probably kind of naive, and they just think, oh, this is like a corruption issue, and we just have to get the corruption out. You know, the vast majority of people aren't normies by definition, and it doesn't do us any favors to project non-normie mentality onto normies and assume that they're acting that way. These guys here could be pretty politically detached. They're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I just watch the news occasionally, but I'm mostly just focused on work. And they told me to go, this guy said something about the president, the vice president, that's kind of sketchy, and let's go check him out. Like, it's conceivable that's what these guys are like. In that case, this is the best thing possible. Just make them be ashamed to show themselves in public. Ashamed to identify with the badge at all. This is one of the steps in actually eliminating the influence of rogue bureaucracies like the FBI, is just make it unfashionable to be an FBI agent, to admit that you're an FBI agent. Like, imagine if your job, just whatever job you have, imagine if it became like you couldn't tell other people what you do for a living because they'd be like, oh, seriously? That's what you do? Think about the effect that would have on your personal life. It's going to make you just, it'll be a source of perpetual stress in the job, and you just won't associate anything positive with it until finally you just like, I'm done with this. This is part of the process of destroying our enemies culturally. If they're regime lackeys, treat them like it. They should be seen as worse than what hookers were historically. Okay, little update on the Haitian story, the Haitian problem. Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, weighs in on the hoax bomb threats.
At least 33 separate bomb threats, each one of which has been responded to, and each one of whom has been found as a hoax. So 33 threats, 33 hoax. I want to make that very, very clear. None of these had any validity at all. We know that people are very, very concerned, and we have.
So these hoaxes, these threats that were to the number 33, the magic number. I know some people who are freaking out about that now. 33 calls, threats, 33 hoaxes. Every single one of them was a hoax. Now, what were the purpose of these hoaxes? Like, why would you, if you were the narrative, of course, is that this is the evil Republicans, the evil Trumpers who are doing this. What would be going through the mind of a so-called Trumper who would like execute a hoax like this? It doesn't even, there's not even the remotest incentive alignment there to even make the slightest bit of sense. But it would make sense for someone who wants to see MAGA Americans framed in the worst light possible and wants to create a pretext or justification for violence against them. So if we're trying to suss out the motivations of where this would come from, we saw immediately how it was used. I've played you guys the clip of Dana Bash accusing J.D. Vance of being responsible for these, what turn out to be hoaxes. But not just that. There's more to it. They weren't just hoaxes.
Taken some actions, and in a moment I'll let Andy Wilson go into more detail. But we've moved resources into Springfield. So I want to say to the parents in Springfield, these hoaxes, these threats have all been hoaxes. None of them have panned out. We have people, unfortunately, overseas who are taking these actions. Some of them are coming from one particular country. We think that this is, one more opportunity to mess with the United States, and they're continuing to do that. So we cannot let the bad guys win. Our schools must remain open.
So most of them are coming from not just overseas, but one particular country. Yet he's not willing to acknowledge who this country is. He's not willing to say publicly. What countries out there could be responsible for something like this that's being weaponized against Republicans, and yet a prominent Republican would be unwilling to actually say it publicly? That list is awful short. Can't think of very many that would fall on that list. I can think of a number who have ready-made narratives, which all would be to the sorts of Republican influences that Mike DeWine is associated with. I would imagine he would have no problem publicly acknowledging those. He would want to pound the war drums, get everything going. But for some reason, he's not willing to acknowledge who it is. Chris Rufo says this is direct foreign government interference in the election. The governor should specify which nation conducted this psychological operation. Voters have a right to know who's meddling in our election. And I agree. I strongly endorse Chris Rufo chasing this down to the end of the earth. Please, Chris, pin them to the wall. Make them reveal who it is. I have a feeling I know. I have a feeling I know who it is, and I have a feeling I know who the who it's going to be revealed to be, because I'd imagine it's going to at some point. I'll be surprised if they just sit on it. But let's just say it starts with I. How's that for covering my bases? I'll let you guys fill in the blanks. Another one from him, he says, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is refusing to identify the foreign actors who called in the majority of hoax bomb threats in Springfield, Ohio. This is outrageous. The public has a right to know which foreign nations are meddling in our elections. And here's an email. He says, I'm working on a report for City Journal and would like to know which foreign country was responsible for the bomb threat hoaxes. Please let me know. And Dan Tierney, press secretary for Mike DeWine, says, our office is not disclosing the country in an effort to discourage further threats to the schools and other buildings. Huh. Very, very interesting. Now, I will say that this has all of the markings, all of the hallmarks of some sort of an intel op on some level, which means you can get pretty elaborate in the explanations and the connecting of dots because this is how they function in the dark. So I can see a world here where Chris Rufo is being led on a treasure hunt for the purpose of establishing the basis for one narrative. I can also see this being Chris Rufo is onto something and doesn't realize what he's onto just yet. And he's going to keep digging into it. And then suddenly he's going to have a come to Jesus moment if he finds out. Misinformation is going to fly. So don't dig yourself too firmly into any particular narrative or any particular read on it. There are many, many people who are all fighting for narrative supremacy right now. Josh says, Chris is a normie whisperer that preaches MLK equality. I'm not saying he believes this. I'm saying it's the weapon he's using. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you guys are on it. I'm reading between the lines here. And Pascal in particular is on it. Okay, a little update on polling stuff. New Pennsylvania poll. Now, this was from Suffolk and USA Today. And N of 500 likely voters. So these are not like really, really detailed, comprehensive, telling polls. However, says New Pennsylvania poll, Harris 49, Trump 46. So Harris is up +3. And when you dig into the poll from real political data, when you dig into the poll, the pre-debate number was Harris +9. So at least these two data points here show an indicator of a huge Trump bump after the last poll. And there's a number of polls that are all showing this. If Harris is +3 in Pennsylvania right now on a kind of shoddy poll that USA Today and Suffolk are releasing, this is a very strong Republican indicator. Again, all caveats applied. You guys are smart enough to know. All caveats apply here. Within all of that context, taking this with an entire dump truck full of salt, it's yet another in the drumbeat of strong indicators. Were this a quote-unquote normal election, it wouldn't even be close. Okay. Now, in the lead up to this Trump shooter conversation, we have some commentary from an unexpected source.
I wanted to just say, listen, I'm really sorry that this is going on and it's being dealt with this way. Not because I'm in favor of his politics or what he says. I criticize him all the time. That's my job, and he deserves it. But he doesn't deserve this. A guy pointing an AK-47 at him while he's playing golf? And we take solace in the fact that the guy didn't get any rounds off. If I have been through what that guy's been through in the last 2 months, you would not know where I am. You would never see me on TV again. No way I would do that. I don't know how he does it. He's got kids, they're adults, but he's got grandkids. He's got a wife. People giving crap to Melania Trump, worrying about whether or not there was a plot around his husband. How could she not? People mock her. And then her husband has a guy pointed with an AK-47. Where are those people apologizing? That's what it's time for. We are playing a dangerous game with ourselves. He is not a despot in waiting. Okay? I don't buy it. You gotta care when somebody tries to kill somebody. I've told you this before, and I've learned the lesson so many times myself around the world. Either you care when anyone is hurt, or you'll never really care about anyone being hurt.
I mean, that's some Kino right there. I think that he's entirely an opportunist. I think he's moving to where the puck is going, because he knows how to generate good content and keep the career running. So leaving that aside, because that's really irrelevant. All that matters is that now we have this sound clip, and the meme makers have made it into a fantastic meme. Let me see how much reach this has gotten from the original tweet. 180,000 views. Not too bad. We're going to amplify it a little bit more, because this is, to the normie mind, seeing something like this, even just the raw clip, to the normie mind, seeing that and seeing even Chris Cuomo is now moving in this direction. It's continuing to normalize and mainstream the I guess the MAGA Maha movement. Did Cuomo listen to that Stormy Waters interview? If he had, he'd be saying the exact same things. Okay. So, yes, Ryan says, glad he's counter-signaling, but if not for the CNN exit, he'd still be saying the same stuff. Yes, exactly. But if he's going to say the good stuff, then we need to give him all the positive reinforcement we can. There was something else here that I wanted to highlight. Josh said, so if a foreign country engages in bomb threats, America won't give info so they won't make more bomb threats? That doesn't math. Right. And that's how you know that it's bullshit. This is like a flimsy pretext. Oh, national security. It's national security. We can't tell you about that because that implicates national security. Well, that's not going to fly. Okay, well, how does it implicate national security? They're going to get ahead of it. They're just going to say, oh, we don't want more bomb threats, so we can't tell people who it is because then there might be more bomb threats. Yeah, okay. Uh-huh. Yeah, you run with that. So, let's just... I've got these in sort of a rough order, but they didn't fit cleanly into one order or another, so we're just going to head through them in the order that I have them open. So Mario Knopfel says, breaking, accused Trump gunman hid in sniper's nest for 12 hours. Ryan Wesley Routh, the alleged Trump assassin, hid in a sniper's nest near Trump's West Palm Beach golf course for nearly 12 hours before being spotted by Secret Service. His cell phone showed that he arrived around 1:59 a.m., and his gun barrel was detected at 1:30 p.m., 300 to 500 yards from Trump. A loaded SKS-style rifle, digital camera, or it was a GoPro, and 2 bags were found at the scene. He fled, but was later caught on I-95. He has prior convictions for weapons and stolen goods possession. We're going to go a lot deeper into his background. But before we get to that, here's a little graphic here. So if I'm reading this correctly, this is the 6th hole that he was hanging out on. Trump was right here on the end of the 5th hole. So Trump was going to finish up, and let's see, it was either he was coming this way and then he was going to come down this way, or he was going to finish up and come over here and come out this way. I can't really tell on this graphic, but this is how close it was. I've seen a lot of people who are just kind of like, oh, you didn't even get a shot off. He was within minutes of coming within maybe a couple hundred yards of him. So this was very close. Very, very close. I really encourage you guys to go listen to Eric Trump on Megyn Kelly yesterday. Listen to him talk about this. I mean, you could tell he's very much he's very much a normie in the way that he talks about a lot of this stuff. But you can tell that he is really, really personally riled up. And why wouldn't he be? This is literally his dad. And if his dad, like, one time is kind of like, okay, yeah, there was one, but it was a crazy guy. And, two is a pattern. There's a very clear pattern. Wins a debate, gets shot at. Wins a debate, gets shot at. If anything, this is a very good reason not to do any more debates. But he also can't just bunker down and hide, because that's part of why they want this. Them escalating to this point is evidence of desperation. It's evidence that all of these bad poll numbers that we're seeing in public, say what you want about the polls, but there's legitimacy to the fact that they're bad. And there doesn't seem to be any sort of confidence in the ability to just fortify it and take care of it, no big deal. Because these sorts of things aren't happening in a vacuum. These aren't just random crazies. We'll get into that here a little bit more in just a little bit. But go listen to Eric talking to Megyn. He's genuinely really upset. He describes when he was sitting watching his dad's January or July 13 speech, and he was watching it with a 4 and a 6-year-old. Imagine a 4 and a 6-year-old sitting down on TV watching their grandpa talk, and all of a sudden he goes down and comes up with blood all over his face. These are human beings. It's easy to sort of turn them into like fictional characters that we just hear about on TV. These are actual human beings that have a personal relationship with him, and he's well known as a very doting, attentive, lovable grandfather. The more he goes and does these long-form podcasts, the more people see just how grandfatherly and sincere he is. His conversation about drug addiction with Theo Vaughn was pretty poignant. So I highlight all of this to say this is not merely a matter for his family and for the people associated with him. This is very quickly, the more that this sort of thing happens, it's very quickly radicalizing them more and more into realizing this isn't just something you could just tweak around the edges. This is effectively a foreign occupied government explicitly acting to destroy America. That realization, which obviously is very true, that realization is becoming more and more apparent to them. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be fully rabid, ideological Thomas 777 listeners. Some of them might. I think some of them already are. But they're going to approach this like normies do. They're not going to be, no matter how radical this gets, in this election cycle, nobody is going to be in the frame of mind where they're able to detach themselves from the system completely and be ready for some kind of radical change. This was a mistake that a lot of us made, that I made, and a lot of other people I saw made this mistake in 2020. Thinking that, like, exporting our non-normie brain into the normies and assuming they're going to operate as if they're in a situation that we feel like they're in. But most of these people, the vast majority of people, love America and they want America to continue to exist. And they've been indoctrinated for 80 years to believe that any departure from some of these foundational norms and foundational institutions signifies the worst things imaginable. So they're going to need a lot to get over that hump. And this is why I'm saying, and have been saying, this is not the election for everything to change. That's not going to come through an election. When people are still thinking about the possibilities and taking elections seriously, they're not going to be in the frame of mind for some sort of whole-scale radical change, which honestly is a good thing, because we're not ready to support and sustain some kind of wholesale radical change. Our hope has to be that we can get Trump crammed into office come hell or high water and buy ourselves just a little bit more time to build stuff locally, to establish ourselves and get the ball rolling on building superior institutions. That's what's going to take, not parallel institutions. They're going to have to be superior institutions. And those don't just crop up overnight. No amount of money can make that happen. We have to play the long game. No matter, like, the more urgent it gets, the more committed to the long game we have to be in. Which means we have to do the little things before we can do the big things. So listening to the more normie commentators, or the more normie people weighing in on this, and seeing how much their norminess revolves around their love for America, for the country, for the experiences of the country, wanting it to stay like it is. I know that it's not going to stay like it is, that it can't stay like it is. But I want to be around people who like it as it has been, who want the 90s America, who want to hold on to that. I want them to have that in their mind more than I want them to be ready to just burn it all down and throw it all out. Be careful what you wish for if you want people to radicalize too much too quickly. I'm not saying that this is easy or straightforward. It's going to be nothing is sure. Nothing is certain. We're having to I don't know, like, ride a unicycle and juggle on the civilizational level. But this is the lot that's in front of us. So all of my Trump optimism and enthusiasm, and what I see my role as in white pilling people on this, is not toward the end of Trump gets elected and everything gets solved. You know, Jason from the 2-Bit podcast said something today, and I think it was in one of the group chats. He said that we need to be prepared for a lot of people who seem really based right now to suddenly get a lot less based after Trump is elected. And that's true. We can be inspired and encouraged by them seeming a lot more based right now, and we can use that to our advantage. But we also have to be prepared for the fact that electing Trump is not a cure-all. Electing Trump is just a matter of buying ourselves time to build. And that building has to be happening now. It should have been happening a long time ago. But it has to happen now. We need communities and networks and mutual aid societies, both big and small. We have to be able to advocate for our own values, and to be able to advocate for our own values, we need the resources to do so. And the great thing is, if we begin building now, and we sustain this, it'll put us in a better spot than we would have been otherwise if something happens and we wind up with a worst case scenario in over the next several months. Yes, Jason said the VC alignment with our guys won't last. Use the window wisely. Yes. Yes. Okay, let me get a couple of these super chats here. Appreciate you guys. QWERTYZZ7, $5 Canadian, says, what about Mr. Z saying that Trump needs to debate more? I like Mr. Z. I definitely think that Trump does not need to debate more. There's nothing left to debate. He did it once. It was a tire fire. There's this whistleblower thing with ABC News. I'm still holding off on it, waiting to see what happens with it. I've been accumulating a bunch of info on it. I'm aware of the story. I've been following it since the guy on Twitter, DocNet YouTube, since he first started tweeting that there was going to be a whistleblower. I'm waiting to see what comes of that. But it's looking like it's probably legit, because it would be pretty easy to shoot down if it's not. And supposedly, I'm not going to get into all of it just yet. I'm going to wait to see what happens with it. But I definitely don't think that he needs to debate anymore. I think he needed to do this last debate. I think that was necessary, but I don't think it's necessary anymore. He needs to go on some other big podcasts. Go on Tucker Carlson. Go on Joe Rogan. Totally, just do it. Go on Joe Rogan. Go on Tucker Carlson. What are some others? He's done a lot of the big ones already. He stole a viral tweet. I was crafting a viral tweet. It was going to be so good about all these different shows he needs to go on, and then he just went and did it. $10 US from Michael Robertson. Thank you, sir. He says, a guy can't even ask, where were you during the Trump assassination attempt anymore? What a world. Man, that's true. I didn't even think about that. I mean, I have to admit myself that when I heard about it, well, the way I heard about it was I was sitting on my phone. I can't remember what I was watching something on my phone. And then I got a notification from Vivek saying, because I've got his tweet notifications on. He wasn't texting me yet. I got a tweet notification from him that said, I'm glad President Trump is safe. And I was like, oh, what the fuck now? And so then I looked it up, and I was actually kind of struck by just how unemotional I was about it. It didn't really impact me that much. The first one definitely did. This one was just kind of like, wow, okay, well, good thing he's safe. But it was also like, yeah, of course, that was going to happen. I'm not surprised. Be very interested to see what all the details are on the story. But then my mind just kind of left it. It didn't even, I wasn't up like pacing around. Like the frickin' president, there was an assassination attempt on the president, and it was just kind of like, yeah, what can you expect, man? That's going to happen. So I like, if I'm feeling that, then the average normie probably isn't even aware of it. Which is crazy, but it's also just reality. Josh says, Trump is thriving. Trump knows that he's only getting flack because he's over the target. I believe Trump understands where he went wrong the first time, and he's surrounding himself with better people. Yeah, he's even said that as much himself. In a couple of the interviews he's done, he's been like, he's pointed out exactly what happened, that he got subverted and he trusted people he shouldn't have because he was new to Washington. He was always a New York guy, didn't really know Washington all that well, and didn't realize how far gone everything was. Matthew Ivy says, hey, Matt, I was wondering if you had any issue with VTubers. The reason being there's one, Kerschel, who I think you would like and talk about schizo posts, even political things. Never. I don't know what VTube is. Am I revealing that I'm not one of the kids anymore? I don't know what VTube is, but I will check it out. Let me write that down. Is that Kerschel? Is that how it's supposed to be spelled? Kerschel. Okay. Josh says we must build a patronage network from the bottom up. Get in, Normie. We're building the new Amerikaner empire. Go west, young man. Mars calls. Hear, hear. Okay. Oh, live action anime streamer. Virtual YouTuber, you boomer. Yeah, you guys got me. I'm a boomer. I'm not exactly a live an anime live streamer follower. Okay, let's move on to the next thing here. So, of course, unsurprisingly, the journalistic response: man arrested at Trump golf course had a history of crusading for causes. They're going to valorize the man because, of course, they are. Josh Posobiec, you don't hate journalists enough. You think you do, but you don't. Isn't that an Orrin McIntyre quote? I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. This is their, they changed the headline after an outcry. This is what they said. Man arrested at Trump golf course had a history of crusading for causes. Interviews, records, and a self-aggrandizing book suggest that Ryan Routh, a peripatetic builder, saw himself as an influential participant in momentous world events. The man arrested after apparently plotting to assassinate former President Donald J. Trump at one of his Florida golf courses on Sunday appeared to tell Iran in a rambling self-published book last year that it was, quote, free to assassinate Trump. The self-aggrandizing book, titled Ukraine's Unwinnable War, along with social media posts and other public statements from the suspect Ryan W. Routh, reflected his intense desire to fight for Ukraine. He also took a dim view of Mr. Trump, referring to him as a fool, idiot, and buffoon. Now, I will point out that despite the hagiographic headline, they're actually saying outright that he apparently plotted to assassinate Trump. That's an improvement. And they're making it very clear. They're acknowledging very clearly that this was a politically motivated event. This is not just extremism, whatever that is. Like people say, "Oh, this is politically motivated. It wasn't motivated by extremism." Which, you what, mate? However, I will say, you ought to be very, very skeptical because there's multiple layers of things happening at one time. So you can read this as a good thing. That, hey, the media is actually willing to identify these things for what they are, which is good. That's a win. They're actually highlighting this and they're not burying it. And they're not doing the like saying that he was being brought up on federal gun charges or whatever, like trying to downplay it. They're openly saying what it is. On the flip side, if they're openly saying what it is, why do they have the green light to do that? Perhaps because a narrative is being developed. So we have to be able to see from both of these perspectives at the same time. You have to be able to to move back and forth between different abstractions simultaneously. And both things can be true simultaneously. Democracy has dissolved quickly under our watch, Mr. Routh wrote, describing the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol as a catastrophe, quote, perpetrated by Donald Trump and his undemocratic posse. How Mr. Routh, a peripatetic activist and building contractor with an extensive criminal record, came to possess a semi-automatic rifle, learn of Mr. Trump's weekend whereabouts, and wait for him on the edge of the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida, remains unknown. It's almost like gun laws don't do anything. Anyways, but a review of public records in Mr. Routh's writings, as well as interviews from people who knew him, suggests that he saw himself as an active and influential participant in momentous world events while becoming estranged from at least some of his family and nearly destitute in the process. Mr. Routh has been a serial crusader for causes large and small, dating back to at least 1996, when he campaigned against graffiti in Greensboro, North Carolina, where he lived for decades. In July, he urged President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris on the social media platform X to visit the victims of the assassination attempt against Mr. Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, writing that Trump will never do anything for them. Show the world what compassion and humanity is all about, Mr. Routh wrote on July 16th. In other social media posts, he tagged world leaders and celebrities like Elton John and Elon Musk, often providing his phone number and email as if expecting a response. Hey, Elon, here's my phone number. Hit me up. Maybe I should try that. Mr. Routh appears to have spent much of his life in Greensboro, a city of about 300,000, though in recent years he had lived in Hawaii. In December 2002, he was convicted of a felony for, quote, possessing a weapon of mass death and destruction. According to the criminal complaint, that year he was arrested in Greensboro after barricading himself inside a building with a fully automatic weapon, according to a local newspaper and Tracy Folk, a former Greensboro police officer who said she had pulled him over and spotted a gun in his truck before he fled. He acted like he had some sort of mental health issue, she recalled. You don't say. So this is one thing. I've seen a lot of people talking about how he was convicted of a felony for possessing a WMD, and the WMD that he was convicted of was a machine gun. Mr. Routh's other criminal charges in North Carolina include possession of a stolen motor vehicle, possession of stolen goods, and several driving violations. Yet records show that he was a concerned citizen interested in local causes. Isn't it remarkable that he had all of these different charges? I think I saw something where he'd been arrested like 70-something times. He had all these different charges, and yet he's still out wandering around doing his stuff. In the 1990s, he appeared in the pages of a local newspaper as a family man, decorating his 1840s log cabin home for Halloween, and as a good Samaritan who won a law enforcement Oscar for chasing a suspected rapist in his neighborhood. In 1996, a Greensboro newspaper published a letter from Mr. Routh decrying, quote, the ever-increasing amount of graffiti in the city as a constant reminder of the moral disintegration of our America. That might be the most 1996 quote I've ever seen. And 2 decades ago, he supported his teenage son's efforts to establish a skate park in Guilford County, North Carolina, which includes Greensboro. Mr. Routh helped the teenagers get permission to use a piece of property owned by an oil company. One of the skaters, Will Milson, now 36, recalled in an interview on Monday that Mr. Routh had shown the boys how to bend plywood to construct quarter pipes. Mr. Milson said Mr. Routh was an active father who wanted his 3 children to be self-reliant and productive. His daughter ran a small business printing T-shirts. He wanted his skateboarding son to, quote, be more involved in doing stuff for yourself and to be productive, Mr. Milson said. Mr. Milson also worked alongside Mr. Routh's son at Mr. Routh's roofing company. He recalled about 70 employees and 3 project managers. I didn't think he was really political, Mr. Milson said after learning of Mr. Routh's arrests. Okay. Mr. Routh's social media post suggests that he was a Trump supporter in 2016, but had turned against him by 2020. He voted in North Carolina's Democratic primary this year, records show. Relatives of Mr. Routh in North Carolina and Hawaii did not respond to requests for comment. This year, he and his daughter sold their dilapidated home in Greensboro for about $175,000 to David Hageman, a real estate agent who helped his business associate buy the property. In Hawaii, Mr. Routh built storage units and tiny houses. Tomas Baggio, 32, credited Mr. Routh with quickly building him and his wife a 120-square-foot home in 2021 for $14,000, just a fraction of what other contractors had quoted them. This is his house and his vehicle that had a Biden-Harris sticker on it. If it wasn't for him, my wife and I wouldn't have had a place to live right now, Mr. Baggio said. Saley Levi, the owner of a vanilla farm, hired Mr. Routh to build what Mr. Levi called a small shop on wheels so he could more easily haul his products to farmers markets. Mr. Levi found Mr. Routh to be a scattered man who seemed unable to accept responsibility. Mr. Levi said that Mr. Routh's work was shoddy and that after the two had verbally sparred about it, Mr. Levi received an email full of cutting insults and references to his involvement in international conflicts. Quote, I spent 5 months in Ukraine last year, and 3 months there this year, and 2 weeks in D.C., and 2 weeks in Taiwan this year, volunteering and trying to supply thousands of Afghan soldiers to help win the war. Perhaps I would be happier dead on the front lines than dealing with rich people in fancy cars as I drive old, broken-down vehicles and hoping to keep my account out of the negative and hoping for food to eat, he added. China and Russia will certainly win at this rate. Many of the 291 pages of his book are filled with graphically violent and bloody images of soldiers and civilians from a range of conflicts. In one convoluted passage, Mr. Routh apologized to Iran for Mr. Trump's dismantling of the Obama administration's nuclear deal and then wrote, "You are free to assassinate Trump." End quote. I am quoting from his book. This is a newsworthy quote. Don't bother me, YouTube. The Associated Press was the first to report on the book. Weeks after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Mr. Routh posted on social media that he was willing to die for the cause and headed to Kiev, Ukraine's capital, shortly after. Not long after his arrival, Mr. Routh was told that he would be of no use on the front line because of his age and lack of military experience, he told the New York Times last year. So he was interviewed by the New York Times last year. So he pivoted, hoping to recruit foreign fighters and set up tributes to those killed in battle. Mr. Routh had set up a website called Fight for Ukraine, in which he explained how to travel there and join the Ukrainian army as a foreign fighter. For the better part of a year, his main focus was getting hundreds of Afghan soldiers who had fled after their country's government collapsed to fight for Ukraine. Mr. Routh had lofty ideas, some of them illegal, when it came to accomplishing his plans, such as paying officials, forging documents, and using U.S. military aircraft to fly Afghans into Poland. But he was dogged in his approach, according to one soldier who fought with Ukraine and helped officially recruit foreign fighters into Ukraine's Foreign Legion. This is the photo of the items belonging to him. There's his gun and then like a bag and body armor that he had. The soldier who requested anonymity to discuss sensitive information said that Mr. Routh often offered to provide recruits from the Middle East in exchange for a commission. He added that he was not aware of Mr. Routh getting any foreign fighters into Ukraine. By the summer of 2023, Mr. Routh had become frustrated with Ukrainian demands and red tape, and his zeal turned into disillusionment and contempt. He started getting a bad taste in his mouth for Ukraine, said David M. Edwards Jr., a retired U.S. Army Ranger and founder of Project Exodus Relief, a group advocating the evacuation of U.S.-trained Afghan military members. Mr. Edwards connected Mr. Routh with several Afghan fighters who were trying to leave Kabul, but noticed that something was off, he said. Ultimately, Mr. Routh left the Afghan fighters stranded halfway on their journey to Ukraine with no support or money to return to Afghanistan. But one former Afghan soldier, who was one of the first refugees that Mr. Routh had tried to help, stayed in touch until just days before Mr. Routh's arrest in Florida on Sunday. The soldier, who spoke on condition of anonymity because he was afraid of reprisals, said that Mr. Routh was living out of the back of his car. In a WhatsApp message to the soldier, Mr. Routh sent a picture of his trunk filled with clothes and sleeping items with the caption, "My house." He also sent the soldier a picture of his bank account. It only had $68 left. Still, the soldier said that just days before he was arrested, he was still sending money to a friend, an Afghan commando who was stuck in Kenya and trying to get to Ukraine. What a very fascinating character. So I've got a great video here from Mike Benz going into all these details, talking to Natalie Winters on War Room. But before we get to that, I wanted to skim through a couple of people who've dug into some of his details. But before I do that, here's a video of him from 2022.
Слава Україні! Я вдячний кожному, хто сьогодні виходить на акції в Україні і в світі. Всім, хто розуміє, наскільки критичною є ситуація в Маріуполі. Всім, хто кричить про Маріуполь. Кожен день на Азовсталі – це нові загиблі та нові поранені, яких немає можливості тут лікувати. Увага всього світу зараз прикута до Маріуполя та до Азовсталі. Але цього недостатньо. Потрібно зробити зелений коридор для евакуації нашим пораненим. Потрібно негайно надати їм кваліфіковану медичну допомогу. Повірте, ці хлопці заслуговують на евакуацію. Дайте нам також вивезти тіла наших загиблих побратимів. Ми закликаємо весь цивілізований світ долучитися до гарантій безпеки та евакуації наших бійців, які зробили неможливе та продовжують захищати батьківщину, яка повинна зробити все, щоб ці герої змогли живими повернутися до своїх рідних. Іншої можливості врятувати життя людей на Азовсталі може і не бути. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! Ми, родини військових, які зараз знаходяться в місті Маріуполь, звертаємося до нашого президента Володимира Олександровича. Будь ласка, зверніться офіційно до представників ООН та внесіть в списки наших поранених, військовий гарнізон та заберіть тіла загиблих воїнів. Всі родини та вся Україна вас просить це зробити.
I am Azov, I am Mariupol, I am Ukraine. Sorry, it's really hard, but the purpose of the action is to appeal to world leaders. World organization is to appeal to world leaders.
Aha! Now, I saw one rumor going around that he and this is part of the people trying to make connection between him and the supposed Trump shooter from the first supposed Trump shooter, and said that they both appeared in BlackRock videos. That's actually not true. Not that I've seen. I haven't seen any BlackRock video that he's in. However, I do think that this is an instance where the people who are oh no, he wasn't actually in a BlackRock video. Okay, yeah, he wasn't in a BlackRock video. He was in an Azov Battalion video. So, I mean, tomato.
World organization with a demand to provide a green corridor and evacuation of all survivors. All people who now situated.
Okay, so the guy's background is becoming very obvious. He's obviously mentally unstable. I see him as very likely. I mean, this is basically modern like MK Ultra. This is how they function now, through networks of NGOs that are all linked into these same issues. Honestly, he's like the nexus point for all the biggest stories that are dominating the geopolitical landscape right now, which is kind of fascinating on like a narrative level. But so here's his book. Max Blumenthal did a nice long thread on here, and I'm not going to read absolutely all of it, but it says would-be Trump shooter Ryan Routh has published a 291-page book, Unwinnable War, about his time in Ukraine's International Legion. He says he'd like to see Putin assassinated, seems to hope for Trump's assassination as well, and calls for the U.S. to instigate a nuclear war with Russia. Stating he's neither a Democrat nor Republican, Routh's clearly articulated mindset toward Russia mirrors that of Beltway hardliners. He offers gushing admiration for Juan Guaido, the Free Syrian Army, Myanmar rebels, and other CIA-backed forces, while hinting at a friendship with MSNBC NatSec hack and fellow International Brigade member Malcolm Nance. Interesting. I wonder if Malcolm Nance was involved in grooming him for this role. Speculation. I'm sure he'll completely distance himself and want nothing to do with him. So it says he calls for the assassination of Putin and Lukashenko of Belarus, arguing that their killing would bring on the demise of the Russian state's viability as an independent power, as no one can succeed Putin. He urges the West to instigate a nuclear conflict with Russia and strike first. He wants a quick and decisive and powerful blow to end it once and for all, as the U.S. did at the end of World War II. He declares himself a political independent, neither Republican nor Democrat, but clearly loathes Trump. In a rambling passage, he appears to fantasize about the assassination of Trump as punishment for his unraveling the Iran deal. He says, I have been very impressed by every person that I have met from Iran and more impressed by the recent protest against government brutality. As I look at them, they are exactly the same as the citizens of the U.S. and other civilians around the globe that protest injustice, and it is a wonderful and honorable thing to see those standing up for their fellow man in unjust abuse. I want to be there in the streets with the Iranians with banners and posters and screaming for justice. I would also like to be protesting in those streets against U.S. sanctions. I would like to celebrate the amazing work of John Kerry that very humbly and humanly handled the Iran deal, which elated me and the whole of the world. I must take part of the blame for the retarded child that we elected for our next president that ended up being brainless. But I am man enough to say that I misjudged and made a terrible mistake, and Iran, I apologize. You are free to assassinate Trump as well as me for that error. This dude is like the boomer truth regime incarnate. You could not create a better like paragon or archetype of the boomer truth regime than this dude. He spills lots of ink complaining about the Ukrainian state's waste and corruption. Here he says it hampered the PR efforts of his International Legion comrade in arms in Kiev, Malcolm, who appears to be MSNBC NatSec hack and wannabe freedom fighter Malcolm Nance. He says, corruption office in Kiev is one of the busiest offices in town with a constant flow of traffic and massive barred access doors and security. Huh, you don't say. As the International Legion struggles for the simplest of vehicles to get soldiers around at the front line, and Malcolm is forced to buy his own computers for HQ, and Stu to buy lights and cars and the basic necessities, it makes one wonder where all the U.S. funding is going. I do wonder. Zelensky's Project 24 is an effort toward transparency, but one must wonder whether he already has his private island paid for and is getting set for when his days are done. We hear stories of entire shipments of medical supplies getting stolen and army tanks that end up missing and many crazy stories of theft and corruption, and it makes one sad when a few bad people in Ukraine take advantage of the generosity of the world, but it happens and we can only hope that other Ukrainians down the line will give them the justice they deserve in the long run. He poses in Kiev with World Central Kitchen's Jose Andres, a close Biden admin ally and State Department collaborator who promotes Zelensky. He incorrectly refers to him in his book as Jose Luis. I wonder if that's how he introduced himself. The sense that I get of this guy is that he is like entirely sincere and just kind of insane. He's kind of like the pinnacle of naive boomerism and genuinely believes every single thing that he is saying, and his passion for action vastly outstrips his IQ. A perfect patsy, a perfect proxy for this whole thing. A couple interesting things in this tweet here, and I'm sharing this so I can highlight it and then put it in the master thread afterwards for people to go dig into each of these articles if they're interested in more. But Enduring Argent, at Argent7771, says, just to summarize last night's stream on Ryan Routh, as I uncovered a bunch of stuff while I was doing it, and I think it's important to lay everything out. Note there is no speculation here. I provided primary sources for everything. According to articles in both Newsweek and PBS, looking at the article again, it was removed from it, Ryan Routh was the head of something called the International Volunteer Center. So let's open this tab here. This is the International Volunteer Center. Your guide to volunteering in Ukraine. Choose where you want to contribute, plan your trip to Ukraine, and get to know your volunteer community. Fill out the connection form. Okay. So coming back to the tweet, continuing here. If you click on volunteer community on the website, it shows a sister organization called American House Lviv. Under the About page, America House is listed as being run by IREX. If you go to the National Endowment of Democracy's website, IREX is listed as one of their projects. For those of you who aren't aware, the National Endowment for Democracy, or the NED, is a fund created by the State Department to fund massive numbers of NGOs around the world. If you listen to Mike Benz, you're very well aware of the National Endowment of Democracy. If you haven't, just go listen to his last conversation with Tucker. Very, very good. And he went into it at length, and he streamed about it and talked about it at length. This is the nexus point for State Department operations. So it's a fund created by the State Department to fund. So this is like funded directly by the U.S. government into this NGO to fund massive numbers of NGOs around the world, who generally are the ones that carry out regime change, color revolutions, or otherwise try to undermine governments and cultures the U.S. doesn't like, and who are a threat to global liberalism. Don't listen to me, just look at their website. Some projects they run include Radio Free Europe, Freedom House, and Reporters Without Borders. Also, they were deeply involved with the Arab Spring, the recent regime change in Thailand, Euromaidan, and numerous others. Does this mean that Ryan Routh was working for the deep state? No, it doesn't, but there is a direct link between him and the U.S.'s main regime change organization, who by its own founder's admission, Alan Weinstein, ding, 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 And a lot of, quote, and a lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA, close quote. It's super sussy at the very least. This is exactly it. They admit it themselves. This is one of the things that Benz has hit on a lot. A lot of the stuff that's attributed to the CIA has actually been exported. Like, this was part of the point of things like Operation Mockingbird and infiltrating all of the universities, because they basically just taught people how to act as CIA agents within the United States. This is their workaround. And it's just done out in the open. They just teach people all of the methodologies and train them to go out, and the vast majority of people don't even realize it. They're really kind of like Manchurian candidates. So a lot of the CIA targeted conspiracy stuff is actually like it's sourced back to the CIA originally, temporally, and a lot of it is coordinated with the CIA. It becomes a way of funneling dollars and intel, but much of it is done in public, in the open, by research organizations and other such NGOs. So here's the clip from Mike Benz, and I was going to try to get some highlights from it, but the whole thing is good. So we're just gonna plow through it.
There's so much. Every time you come on, it's always hard trying to distill and choose what we want to focus on. But with this individual, there's so many.
Yeah, it's a little fast. We'll do 1 1/4.
Threads to pull. So why don't you just take it away with your sort of top line findings and assessment on who this individual was?
Yeah, it's all very preliminary right now, because the amount of evidence, the amount of the paper trail, the social media trail is so explosive, so vast. It touches so many touch points. You know, I just tweeted a few moments ago that this dude is like the Forrest Gump of CIA paramilitary activity. You can almost spin the globe and find a place where there was CIA paramilitary activity, and somehow Ryan Ruth has just sort of waltzed his way through almost a dozen of them, from Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Haiti, Ukraine. It's quite shocking. You know, the official story that this is just some North Carolina construction worker who happened to have a hankering for Ukraine is absolute nonsense. The fact is what this guy was doing in hundreds and hundreds of Facebook posts that I viewed on a stream last night, is what he was doing is he was collecting passports for basically ISIS fighters, Al Qaeda terrorists, who were at that time doing an influx into Ukraine to attack and kill Russians and assisting essentially the NATO goal there. Remember, ISIS is who we're told is who bombed the Moscow movie theater just a few months ago. ISIS is who's killing the Russians in Africa. ISIS is who's killing the Syrian government military folks in Assad. If you remember the WikiLeaks cable from 2012, where Hillary Clinton wrote that Al Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Remember, ISIS is the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, and you have the Secretary of State, who is effectively the quarterback of the CIA, saying that ISIS is on our side. And so there was an influx starting in 2015 after the 2014 CIA coup to overthrow the democratically elected government of Ukraine, when the eastern side of the eastern half of the Ukraine broke away. It became a breakaway republic, and Crimea voted to join the Russian Federation. That was when NATO and the CIA and British intelligence all embarked on this capacity building mission to run guns, ammo, training, and warm human bodies to the new Kiev government so that they would have the military wherewithal to invade the western half of the state that had just broken away and take it back by military force. This is what precipitated Putin's invasion in 2022. It was the invasion from the east of eastern Ukraine into western Ukraine. And at that time, and starting in 2015, these ISIS fighters began pouring into Ukraine and helping top up this ramshackle Ukrainian military force. Now, what's so amazing is Ryan Ruth seemed to be playing a prolific role in that. He has an entire website dedicated to military recruiting of Afghan and Pakistani and Iranian militants to come to Ukraine. He explicitly tells them multiple times on his website in big, all caps, bold lettering, as well as in hundreds of Facebook posts, do not tell your local embassy that you are coming to Ukraine. Don't say anything. Just send me your passport information and take a plane to Ukraine, or take a plane to Poland and ride a bus into Ukraine.
Now, remember, when he points this out, that the guy was saying, don't tell your local embassy that you're coming. He's recruiting he's recruiting military assets, and he's posting on social media, posting his email address and phone number to major Twitter accounts. He was interviewed by the New York Times. He was featured in an Azov Battalion video. It's not like this guy wasn't on people's radar. Can you imagine one of us doing this? Can you imagine, like run through, like, simulate it in your mind? Because I know you guys all are adept at considering counterfactuals. Run through this in your mind, and imagine, like, recruiting foreign agents for a military venture and telling them openly on the internet, don't tell your local embassies what you're doing. Could it be more obvious that he was very clearly being handled?
Now, why was he saying that? Well, what Ryan Ruth was doing is he was collecting thousands, literally thousands, of passports of terrorists in foreign countries, in CIA war zones, and telling them to not tell their local embassy that they're traveling, but instead go directly through him as a middleman, because he can secure them visas. Now, something explosive that I found on a stream last night is that in some of his Facebook posts, he references his communications with the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, the very U.S. Embassy who overthrew the government, who orchestrated the CIA coup of the Ukrainian government in 2014. And what this was he was collecting all these passports, setting up this giant operation on a static web page, on social media, in WhatsApp channels, in order to get no-look visas for terrorists, which, mind you, is the exact same operation that was written about in a book by Michael Springman, who was a senior State Department official in Saudi Arabia in the run-up to 9/11. He wrote a book called Visas for Terrorists. And in that book, he describes how he was working at the U.S. consulate in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia in the run-up to 9/11. And that most of the people in the consulate at the State Department were working for the CIA, and their formal cover was a State Department attaché there. His boss at the State Department also was working with the CIA. Now, who was the head of the CIA station in Saudi Arabia at that time when the CIA was pressuring him to give visas to terrorists? Let me know if this name rings a bell. At the time, the head of the CIA station house in Saudi Arabia was a man named John Brennan.
Ooh!
John Brennan was the man responsible, effectively, for giving visas out of Saudi Arabia to the 9/11 hijackers. That same John Brennan, the head of the CIA station house doing this Visas for Terrorists operation, would become Obama's chief of the Central Intelligence Agency just years later. And what Ryan Ruth appears to be doing is the same thing, except serving as, a fifth or sixth degree back channel for the same CIA Visas for Terrorists operation that happened in the run-up to 9/11.
So, Mike, I'm just curious where you think the media is obviously saying this guy, no political affiliations, no political motives, despite, like we said earlier, there's a Biden-Harris bumper sticker on his truck. The guy is donated to Democrats. They're sort of trying to bury all of this and make him just seem like, a crazy conspiracy theorist. Where do you think, whether it's the DeSantis investigation or just independent investigations, where do you think, and just give me a minute on this because we've got to jump to break, but if you were advising Congress or whoever's doing the investigations, where would you tell them to focus on, the thread to pick at the most?
I would look at all the contacts, and he name dropped the WhatsApp phone numbers. Those can be obtained. Now, WhatsApp, unlike Telegram, is a subsidiary of Facebook. It's based in the U.S., so a court-ordered subpoena by congressional investigators or under a legal proceeding could obtain the WhatsApp records of all communications. The fact is we have his whole follower list, and it seemed like half the people he was following were CIA and State Department people. We have this guy's network. You can simply trace the network. Now the issue is who was he working for as a subcontractor? The fact is Michael Springman describes this in Visas for Terrorists, that there is this, the spy masters have this complex recruiting process that sources things out to subcontractors and subcontractors of subcontractors. And the fact that this was a crazy person is no surprise, because oftentimes those are the people.
It's a shell game that only the Biden criminal family enterprise, I think, could compete with, right? We've got to jump to a break, but Mike, I've obviously got more questions I want to ask you. So War and Posse, stay tuned and buckle up.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Mann.
Welcome back to the War Room, where the story gets even more twisted and darker and more dangerous when it comes to the suspected shooters' foreign overseas ties. Mike Benz, if you could sort of pick up where you left off, but how the Iran plot, which people may have seen break a few weeks ago, also involving Pakistani nationals, sort of segues and overlaps with this in a, I would say, conspiratorially curious way.
Well, it's stunning. It was only 1 month ago, about like 5 weeks ago, we were told that the CIA had foiled an attempted assassination plot against Donald Trump by a Pakistani national with ties to Iran who was plotting a murder for hire operation to have somebody in the United States shoot Donald Trump. Now, Ryan Ruth, I have an article pulled up right here that was cited by Raheem Kassam, where this is Ryan Ruth was seeking recruits from among Afghan soldiers who fled the Taliban. Mr. Ruth, who spent several months in Ukraine last year, said he planned to move them, in some cases illegally, from Pakistan and Iran to Ukraine. He said dozens expressed interest. He actually said thousands on his Facebook page. And then Ryan Ruth continued, we can probably purchase some passports through Pakistan, since it's such a corrupt country, he said in an interview from Washington. So Ryan Ruth is bringing Pakistani nationals through Iran to his warfighting effort. He's the guy who, we're told, just attempted to assassinate Trump. A month ago, the CIA said they had advanced knowledge of a plot to assassinate Trump that was connected to Pakistani nationals traveling through Iran. Now, you know, not to put the cart before the horse, but Ryan Ruth sounds like exactly the operation the CIA described a month ago.
That, when he said that, when I was listening to this yesterday and he said that, I was like, whoa. That's a good point. He does sound like exactly the thing that they were describing. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate the warning that I issued before, that this is absolutely a time where there is a war of mis and disinformation going on, and narratives are being established. You can see this happening. That there's been a shift just recently. I haven't completely pinpointed when it happened, but it went from things just sort of happening a little chaotically to now I'm starting to sense a drumbeat developing. I don't know exactly where to or where from, but I can smell it. I can just smell narrative formation happening. So just keep your wits about you. There's a lot of people who are now at a point where they want you buying into specific narratives for a lot of different reasons. And they're going to try to frame those narratives to you for compelling reasons. And I'm not being euphemistic here. I'm not hinting at something specific. I'm saying that I smell, it's just kind of, I smell bullshit out here. But I don't know where the bullshit is or where it's coming from or where it's going. I smell some bullshit somewhere. I like Ben's. I'm not trying to cast aspersions on him or what he's saying, but we're in a time of great narrative formation. So be careful which ones you align yourself with, and be on the lookout for psyops.
Now, obviously,
well, Mike, No, go ahead. I thought you were pausing. I know the audience is going to kill me for interrupting you, so keep going.
No, that's fine. You really can. I'll make one more point.
You were pausing for dramatic effect, so it was very dramatic.
Okay, well, just to sort of bring it back to earth, the fact is Ryan Ruth was crisscrossing through the holy trinity of blobcraft, which is the Pentagon, the CIA, and the State Department, in the sense that this was a military operation in Ukraine to capacity build the Ukrainian army and to beef up the ranks with more cannon fodder. It was a CIA operation in the sense that this is plausibly deniable, human trafficking, essentially, and criminal activity that would normally be a felony crime, but you are allowed to commit authorized crimes as part of the CIA in furtherance of a national security operation, as long as you have Justice Department blessing. And the fact is what he was doing was highly illegal. I mean, not only did he have 70 felonies on his record, which is stunning in itself, but then this whole no-look visas, send me your passports and I'll back channel it to the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. That's the CIA operation in visas for terrorists that we were doing in the run-up to 9/11. And then you have the only people who can grant those visas are the State Department. So Ryan Ruth was serving as a State Department back channel for the CIA visas for terrorist operation to assist the Pentagon. You literally, he's right smack dab in the exact center of where the CIA meets the DOD meets the State Department. And just so people understand, he is a crazy person. He obviously has that sort of E. Jean Carroll kooky eye, sort of cadence to his interviews. But the fact is this is not uncommon, because oftentimes the way this happens is the CIA has an operation, or the U.S. Special Forces has an operation where they want to recruit crazy extremists to come fight a war a zillion miles away from where they live. And they need highly deniable links in that recruiting process so that there's no U.S. fingerprints on these terrorists coming on U.S. dime or coming to fight a U.S. operation. They have to look independent. So what happens is they put layers of plausible deniability. The CIA will work through USAID or work through DynCorp or work through the RAND Corporation networks. They will then subcontract that out, who will then subcontract that out to someone who's trusted in the network, and that person may go to their individual friends and family, somebody that they have a connection to, someone who's down on their luck and just needs some cash. That person starts trawling around in Telegram channels or WhatsApp channels or social media and starts recruiting people, starts to develop a network. As they prove themselves, they're given a little bit more side cash, maybe in a crypto account, maybe in an offshore bank account. And then as that person sort of proves their utility, they get more and more responsibility in terms of these compartmentalized recruiting operations. It's quite possible that some friend or family member, the guy grew up in North Carolina, that is military central. That's where Fort Bragg is, the largest special operations center in the U.S. I believe it's only about an hour from where he lived. It's also the largest psychological operations center in the U.S. It's quite possible that he had friends in the military when this special operation to beef up the Ukrainian military was greenlit. They went to friends and family and gave him small tasks at first, and over the process of months and years, that operation expanded, and that's how he got into it. But still, saying he was a unemployed construction worker. But even that, he could have been building construction, ramshackle homes for some of the human trafficking.
I know the audience is gonna kill me, but I don't get to choose when the show ends. Believe me, I'm not a deep state subcontractor. But Mike Benz, in the meantime, people want to follow you.
I need to sponsor the show. I need to sponsor the show. That way, I'll get the extra time from the sponsors. You just ad read my takes. How about that? That's, okay. No, you can follow me
there you
on
go.
X
You
at
can
Mike
be
Ben
an ad read. The anti-deep state. Yeah, Mike Benz, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we will have you back on soon.
Yes, in response to pleb enforcement, I'm well aware of Mike Ben's background, his alternate persona. Very well aware of it. So that's part of why I say hold this stuff lightly. But there are enough time has elapsed, and it's become more and more evident to me as I've surveyed the different forces moving in the shadows, that not all of the intel ops, that there are intel ops flying all over the place, but not all of the intel ops are coming from the same people or for the same reasons. There's lots of competing intel ops. So the stuff that he's breaking down is, from everything that I can see, everything that I can make out, is completely legit. I've watched some of his streams where he's just autistically digging into all of this stuff and coming up to figuring things out in real time. And whoever has put him onto this wants him digging into these things for a reason. And the things he's digging into and exposing, I'm speaking again of Ben's here, the things he's digging into and exposing are exactly the things I want to see dug into and exposed. Now, does that mean I'm being someone's playing at that desire for me? Okay, maybe there's some sort of 4D chess thing going on here, but I'm very happy to see the absolute guts of the regime be exposed for all the world to see. And Tucker seems to trust him, and that goes, they're close friends, and that goes a long ways for me. Okay. Continuing on here. Interesting statements from the ADL. The ADL Center on Extremism has reviewed what we believe to be Ryan Wesley Routh's online posts in an attempt to understand why he may have allegedly tried to assassinate Donald Trump at his golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida. Routh's social media suggests he was once a Trump supporter, having voted for him in 2016. However, he later became disillusioned and disappointed with Trump's presidency. By January 2024, he voiced support for Vivek Ramaswamy and encouraged Nikki Haley to join his campaign. Although Routh's post did not contain threats against Trump, they did support extreme acts of violence against other political figures, including Vladimir Putin. In one post, he explicitly stated, Putin must be killed. He said simply to Zelensky, he says, simply tell Poland you will pay for the planes. If you offer to pay for all the planes from every country, it removes their responsibility. Buy everything. Forget fighting in Ukraine. Fight in Moscow. Kill Putin with a low-flying jet in Putin's bed at night. Routh was particularly focused on international politics. He frequently discussed Taiwan and Ukraine, emphasizing the need to defend Taiwan from China and protect Ukraine from Russia. Many posts revolved around recruiting foreign fighters for these causes. This is very interesting. The ADL is jumping on all of this. In one video, he discusses his work to recruit people to join in the conflict for Ukraine, apparently from Ukraine. On several occasions, he mentioned the situation in Gaza. In December of 2023, Routh posted a historic map questioning Jewish ownership of Israel, suggesting that it historically belonged to Palestinians. Oh, that's why this thread is happening. Additionally, records from the North Carolina Department of Adult Correction indicate that Routh was convicted in 2002 for possessing a weapon of mass destruction. While it's still too early to determine a definitive motive based on his postings, it seems more like a case of potential political violence rather than extremist violence. This was the thing I was thinking of earlier. What a weird differentiation to make. Political violence versus extremist violence. It's like extremist violence doesn't even get to qualify as political violence. It has to be in its own category. He's such a fascinating character. It's so emblematic of everything going on right now that he feeds every narrative that anyone could possibly want from any side. And I do think that he's a loon. I think he genuinely believes all that he's doing and thinks it's all justified because he's wrapped up in this narrative. He's like, he doesn't care if it's illegal or not. Like, now is not the time for laws. We must do everything we can to save the world. It makes him a really, really useful patsy. And so he was targeted and he's being used and handled as a patsy. So when asked why Trump did not have Secret Service protection surrounding the golf course, officials said he's not the sitting president.
How was this able to happen, and for future reference, is there any security of the golf course?
She said, how is this able to happen, and for future reference, is there any updated security for the golf course?
Well, you got to understand the golf course is surrounded by shrubbery, so when somebody gets into the shrubbery, they're pretty much out of sight, all right? And at this level that he is at right now, he's not the sitting president. If he was, we would have had this entire golf course around it. Well, because he's not, the security is limited to the areas that the Secret Service deems possible. So I would imagine that the next time he comes to the golf course, there'll probably be a little bit more people around the perimeter.
You know what's so silly about all this is it's fucking 2024. How difficult would it be to take a drone and fly it over the golf course with like heat detection? Hey, look, there's a person right here. Wonder what he's doing. It'd be so easy. So simple. All of this like, oh, we don't have enough people and blah, 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 blah. It's all bullshit. This is bureaucratic bullshit. For opening the door so that patsies can slip in. So here's an interesting thing from an FBI expert on CNN.
What does the fact that he wanted to survive say to you?
It says that he's not he's not suicidal, apparently. He wasn't going to take his own life if he was almost being captured. Clearly, we saw that he was captured without that. And it tells me that he's probably much more politically motivated. The last shooter in Pennsylvania, I don't want to say his name because I don't want to promote him in any way, but he was clearly a guy that was looking for the notoriety of taking that shot. I would think we're going to find that this guy's extremely politically motivated and that he probably was spurred on by much of the political diatribes that are going on these days, talking about Trump equating him to Hitler and things like that. So I don't think this is the last we'll see of crazies out there trying to do this.
What does the
Another interesting clip for CNN to host. And FBI expert, I don't know who this guy actually is, if he's part of the FBI, from the FBI. He's an FBI expert. Okay, former FBI counterterrorism expert.
He wanted to.
So, right after this happened, Eric Prince posted on Twitter and tagged Ron DeSantis and said to him, "Don't let this guy leave the state. You need to assert your authority over the jurisdiction and take control of him yourself." And DeSantis has done that.
Signing an executive order assigning the case involving the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump to the Office of Statewide Prosecutor under the supervision of Attorney General Ashley Moody. The suspect, Ryan Routh, is believed to have committed state law violations across multiple judicial circuits in the state. Palm Beach Judicial Circuit, the Judicial Circuit including Martin County, as well as perhaps the Judicial Circuit represented by Broward County. Also, the state of Florida has jurisdiction over the most serious, straightforward offense, which is attempted murder. I've directed state agencies to move expeditiously and to provide full transparency to the public. In my judgment, it's not in the best interest of our state or our nation to have the same federal agencies that are seeking to prosecute Donald Trump leading this investigation, especially when the most serious, straightforward offense constitutes a violation of state law, but not federal law. In addition to holding the suspect accountable, the public deserves to know the truth about how this assassination came to be. And I have directed all state agencies to work expeditiously to be able to uncover the truth in addition to holding this suspect accountable. We are going to hear from some folks that will be involved in this, starting with our Attorney General.
So, this is very interesting. I can't believe our luck that of all people, Ron DeSantis is the guy who caught Routh. Yes, it's good to see them using lawfare against the regime. Now, my expectations for this are measured because I think it's good to keep your expectations low, to be hopeful, but keep your expectations low. I don't know for sure that they're going to be able to make everything of this that most of us want it to be. But if he actually does have the dirt that they claim, or that it seems that he does, then he becomes a very, very important, very interesting person. The political implications outside of just him specifically get very, very interesting. I will say right now that if Ryan Routh wanted to unalive himself, he had every opportunity, and he didn't. So I'd say that we need to make sure that the cameras don't go off, don't get switched off around his cell. I'll just say that. If it does happen, that's going to provide another very interesting data point on all of this. I don't think that this story is nowhere near done. Andrew says, my hopefulness is off the charts. My expectations are likewise measured. Yeah, that's the appropriate posture to have. And like Ryan says, even the signaling of taking power from the FBI is good. Yes, this creates a pretext that provides additional incentive for boldness by other governors to assert their authority when they have it and use lawfare against the lawfare practicers. Okay, so I had a video queued up here from Ian Carroll talking about the Trump assassin actually, you know what? I'll just play it because he had some other information in this. It's similar to the video of Mike Benz, but he does have some other stuff here. So we'll rock and roll with this. I'm going to put it on 1.5 because I've still got a number of other things to get to as well.
So the new Trump assassin just dropped, and there's some spicy details already. Ryan Routh, very strange guy who's lived a very strange life. And this time, the internet was wise and archived all of his socials as much as possible before the FBI took it all down. So here's some basics on what we know about him, and one really interesting rabbit hole about who he might be. Right off the bat, though, it's super early. This is all speculative. Take your time, pump the brakes. We're just digging through dirty laundry. We don't know what sticks yet. But this guy is a private American citizen who traveled to Ukraine on his own dime, to help recruit civilian soldiers to fight for Ukraine and Afghan special forces. He was recruiting on his Facebook page. Here's an archive of all of his tweets that look pretty damn automated to me. They pretty much all look like this. In a past life in Hawaii, he apparently ran this company that made a single tiny home and a single Facebook page and never did anything else with it. Super weird. But I grabbed everyone that he followed on Twitter before they deleted it. He only followed 60. And right down at the bottom of that list, which I think indicates his first follow, is this girl named Sue Kim, who is ex-CIA, along with some other very interesting things. Now again, reminder, this is just speculation, digging through Twitter dirt. Maybe this chick is just a wonderful, patriotic person that's helping America. Who knows? But her account is private, meaning why does he follow her? I've been digging around, and one of my followers said that they found her in the people that follow him back. I have not been able to confirm that for myself because they took the account down. If you've got a video of the 1.2 thousand followers that followed him, that would be great to know. He says that she was at the bottom of his followed list, meaning that she followed him right when he made the account. That would make sense, seeing as she's at the bottom of his following list of who he follows too. I mean, every asset needs a handler. And when you go through some of these other affiliations here, you get what is essentially the CIA training grounds at Johns Hopkins University. It explores the relationship between politics and the many kinds of military power, from the use of terror by small non-state groups to the threatened use of nuclear weapons. Its director is John McLaughlin, who is literally an ex-acting director of the CIA and ex-deputy director of the CIA, 3-decade career at the CIA. David is third on the list of people at the top of this institution at the university. 30-year career in Army Special Forces, various special operations, invading various countries, as well as Operation Enduring Freedom. You get the idea. Anyways, RAND Corporation. That's a military-industrial complex think tank, kind of like the Atlantic Council. And LMI org, yeah, that's like a military-industrial complex education and training program as well. Preliminary findings on the internet when you search our homeboy, the shooter, show his arrest record, including in 2002, possession of weapons of mass destruction, Class F felony, along with 3 other blocks of things like possession of handguns or concealed weapons and driver's license stuff. And yeah, that sounds like some operative shit to me. But again, we don't know any of this yet. We're just digging through dirty laundry on the internet. It's hard to tell what's real. But this is a photo of the weapon he used and the setup he had. People are speculating it looks an awful lot like, Russian-Ukrainian class of rifle. He's doing these weird recruitment ops in Ukraine for civilians. Well, he's like posting on his Facebook all the time to like no followers about how he's recruiting hundreds of civilians to fight for Ukraine. Like, posting for like Afghan special forces to contact him so they can come fight in Ukraine. But he's like just a random citizen from Hawaii. And one of the 60 people he follows is this CIA gal that allegedly follows him back. That looks an awful lot like a handler or a contact. His account looks an awful lot like a bot or an MK Ultra or a Pato. Who knows what the hell this is? His criminal record looks an awful lot like what you might expect a kind of guy in this kind of line of work to leave behind. And then there's the weird video evidence getting turned up.
Officials in Kyiv simply aren't interested in recruiting them.
Ukraine is reluctant to be cooperative.
That's Ryan Ruth, a U.S. citizen who set up the International Volunteer Center in Ukraine to help connect foreigners to Ukrainian military units.
Now I'm talking to over 100 soldiers every day, and pretty much everybody, all of my contacts in Ukraine, they were adamant, pretty much yelled at me every time that I suggested that we bring in Afghans.
The Ukrainian government didn't respond to our request for comment, but a source close to the officials in Kyiv told Semaphore that their top concern is the question of loyalty in the thick fog of war.
The biggest thing is spies. They're afraid that anybody and everybody's a Russian spy.
Shout out to some bitch I know on X, who currently has one of the best archives of all of his socials and accounts. There's a lot of other people doing good work right now. And again, I just want to clarify, I'm not trying to pretend like I've solved the case or like we know what's going on. We just have learned by now that the FBI is going to just cover everything up. And so it's up to us to try to dig everything out before they do. So that's what we're doing. And yes, it's ridiculous that that is even a set of sentences we have to say in America in 2024 when someone tries to kill the former and future president of the United States of America. And I mean, I can only imagine who might be backing up these operations to try to shoot him and who might be providing the intel and the access and the cover-ups, etc. So last thing I'll say, Ryan Routh, he's currently in custody. He was driving away in an SUV. They caught him. He's alive for now. And I just want to remind us all, Ryan Routh did not kill himself. If cameras malfunction outside of his cell, if he has a weird slipping accident, whatever happens, yeah, you know the story. 50 more days, my money's on at least one more attempt before we get there. So stay frosty, because the war machine desperately needs the wars to escalate, and they're not down with the MAGA Maha folks shutting down the wars. And they are ready to kill people, ready to assassinate, allegedly, apparently, theoretically, just jokingly, in order to perpetuate those wars.
Okay, so good friend of the show, Jason Rink, called his phone number because it was posted on a tweet or something like that, and this is the answering machine.
This is Ryan in Hawaii with Camp Box Buildings and also the National Volunteer Center sending soldiers to Ukraine as well as Taiwan. If you'd like to volunteer, please send me a message by WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, Signal, Facebook, any of the messaging services, and I will respond. I do not do voicemail, so please do not leave me a voicemail message. I will never get it. Thank you so much. This is Ryan.
Shout out Screwed Up Rebellion, $199 US. I appreciate you. He says, God bless you, Matt. God bless you, my friend. Andrew says, talk about an October fucking surprise. Bless the Lord that he's given us such incompetent enemies. This is a million times better than Hillary's emails or Hunter Biden's laptop. That is the upshot. The upshot is that I'll be very curious to see how the regime responds to this. How much squealing and hollering? Do we start getting think pieces about Ron DeSantis again? Going after him for obstructing an investigation, even going so far as like getting sternly worded commentary from former government officials or senior intel officers. Does it start going that direction? If it does, that'll be another indication of that this is exactly what it looks like. It's a regime patsy who was had the door open for him to take the shot, got caught, because there are still people within the Secret Service who would be willing to take a bullet for the president and who are doing their job. They didn't get the memo that this guy was had a job to do that day, and we now have one of our guys who has him in custody and is able to use him as a battering ram to pry into all the rest of this. Do we get that? That would be the best possible outcome here. So, New York Post, did Ryan Routh have inside info on Trump's movements? Ex-FBI official calls the possibility scary. The alleged would-be assassin arrested for targeting Donald Trump while he golfed in Florida may have been given inside information about the former president's schedule, according to an ex-FBI official who called the possibility scary. Chris Swecker, a retired FBI assistant director, told Newsweek that the feds and other law enforcement will be probing how the suspect, Ryan Wesley Routh, 58, allegedly appeared to know Trump would be at his golf club in West Palm Beach, Florida on Sunday. Now, here's another potential angle on this. Part of why these sorts of statements may be you may get a retired FBI assistant director who comes out to Newsweek and makes this statement, because this is an attempt to sow mistrust and break things up among Trump's inner circle. That's one possibility. I don't think so, but that's something that I've seen suggested, something that makes sense to me as a potential possibility. He says the biggest question to answer is, how did the would-be assassin know to be at that location at that time? Said Swecker, who worked on FBI criminal investigations. There are only three possible answers. He guessed and got very lucky. He conducted surveillance on Trump and followed him to the golf course, or he had inside information about Trump's schedule. He added the last answer is scary and has implications that another person was involved. Routh of Hawaii was nabbed, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The alleged gunman who had the rifle and a GoPro camera allegedly set up, apparently to record the planned shooting, was able to get to between 300 and 500 yards away from the 45th president. The FBI is leading the investigation, working to determine any motive. Yes, I'm sure they are. Despite Trump having a stepped-up security footprint since the last assassination attempt against him in July, Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw said protection for him was still light because he isn't a sitting president, which is absolute bullshit. I've seen the videos of what security looks like for Barack Obama. The entire golf course would have been lined with law enforcement if Trump was the current president, the sheriff said. Now, one thing that in listening to Eric Trump talk about this and get really frustrated at the lack of security, one question Megyn Kelly didn't ask him that I would love to hear someone ask him is, when are you guys going to just start paying for your own security to supplement it? Because that seems like a very obvious solution here. There's some political utility in being able to point at the Secret Service or DHS or whomever and say, you need to provide more security. But at a certain point here, you got to provide your own security. You've got to supplement it with your own. Eric Trump was talking about how this is like a public space. The guy ran across a major highway carrying a long gun, ran across a field, climbed over a fence, went through this grove of trees, and nobody saw him. Well, if you know that Trump is headed there the next day to play golf, then go do your own sweeps. They need to have their own security. You can't just sit back and expect, at this point, it's very obvious, you can't just sit back and expect the regime to protect the biggest threat to it. It's not going to happen. Is it because they're cash strapped? I wouldn't be surprised if they are cash strapped. Yet this is part of the utility in the VC guys coming in. Why is Eric Prince not in charge of the president's protective detail? Is there some sort of some sort of obscure legal thing that prevents someone like that from effectively protecting themselves with their own security? I'd be kind of surprised. I understand all the fact that, yes, the regime should be doing this, but obviously they're not going to. Provide your own damn security. So a couple of interesting possibilities about where this leak could have come from. Health Ranger, who I found to be pretty reliable. He had some interesting stuff around the first assassination attempt. Seems to have some sources. Seems like a trustworthy guy, but I don't know anything about him apart from having just seen him posting about stuff on Twitter. So do with this as you will. He says, a source tells me the leak of Trump's whereabouts is coming from Homeland Security, not Secret Service. Homeland Security is leaking location details to the FBI, and FBI is running the assassins. The entire top leadership of the FBI is desperately trying to figure out how to eliminate Trump, while the loyal elements of U.S. Secret Service are trying to stop it. This anecdotally squares up with all the other stories and everything that I've heard. This makes sense. This narrative makes sense. Is it true? I don't know. Don't have any way of verifying it. But it makes sense that this is how things, that this squares with a lot of things. It doesn't take a huge leap of logic for me to suspect that Mayorkas would be playing a prominent role in something like this. Homeland Security and U.S. State Department are full-on treasonous criminal ops at this point. If Homeland can't eliminate Trump soon, State Department will make sure a war begins with Russia. If they fail, hundreds of top people within FBI and Homeland are either going to flee the country or be criminally prosecuted under a Trump presidency. This is what's at stake. Here's another interesting possibility. Again, from friend of the show, Jason Rink. He posted this video, hat tip to Harrison Smith for identifying this first. Here's Sean Hannity weighing in on what happened.
I happened to go to breakfast with Steve Witkoff and another friend of mine this morning, and I was invited to play golf. They happen to be really good golfers. I don't have a lot of time to play golf, so I said thank you, but I'm not going to go out on the golf course and get killed out there. But
and get what?
Story short, I happened to...
So he went to breakfast with Trump's golfing partner yesterday, was invited to play, and declined because he's not a great golfer and he doesn't want to go out there and get killed. This reminded me of this recent video.
Well, look at there who's standing behind Gavin Newsom. Hannity from the Fox show. Shaking hands and all that. Sound like to me they're all sleeping in the same bed.
Now, to be clear, I'm not putting a tremendous amount of stock in this, but I would just say that the dots were there to be connected if it turned out that this is that there is something to this. The most compelling thing to me, though, is a name that he just dropped. Ryan Dawson said they're saying Trump's inner circle knew where he'd be and where he was golfing. Someone leaked, they say. And yet he was golfing with Steve Witkoff, the Jewish billionaire who acted as the middleman between Israeli billionaire Eitan Wertheimer and the New York Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik on 9/11. They sponsored his trip to Israel and gave him a $250,000 loan. Kerik found a 9/11 hijacker's passport, allegedly. An anonymous person handed it to him and disappeared, and being the good cop he is, he didn't question them. This thing stinks to no end. Frog, River, Scorpion. Count to 3 and they'll blame it on Iran. The donor class often donates to both sides so that they own whoever ends up in power. Most of the establishment class is anti-Trump. The ones against him far outnumber the ones for him. And I think that was... Oh, and he also pointed out the thing about Sue Kim. Of everything that I've heard thus far, this one seems to have the most validity to it. This connects a lot of dots. And I would really like to know from within, this is hard because, again, we're dealing with people, but from within the Trump family, are they connecting these dots? Are they ready to connect these kinds of dots? There's absolutely the will for this and a well-documented history of this sort of thing. The tribe is in the middle of their own civil war. Netanyahu is wildly unpopular among his own people. He needs a war desperately. And he backstabbed Trump with the 2020 election results when he endorsed Joe Biden. Trump took that seriously. You remember the video recently of Trump big-dogging him with the handshake? I think there's something to this. If I had to plant my flag on a particular theory, I think that there's something to this. And this puts Mr. DeSantis in quite the interesting spot. Kind of like Chris Rufo chasing down this which nation is out there making these calls, sending in these hoaxes. We must know who this nation is. Do you really want to know? Tell me, Ron, do you really want to know what this investigation is going to turn up? We're going to have some come to Jesus moments here in the near future, I suspect. Okay, well, that's all that I have on that story for the time being. Again, Twitter, @RealKingPilled. If you find any other interesting stuff that you think fits in here or would belong here, send me a DM there, or tag me. Sending me a DM, I'm more likely to see it than tagging me because I get a lot of notifications. But I'll bring any updates that I see between now and tomorrow. And then tomorrow, I've still got some more stuff today, but tomorrow I'm going to talk about this ABC News whistleblower story. I'm waiting to see if there's any more time for more information about it to come out. But I've already got some really good stuff. It seems very legit to me. Shout out to Jonathan Hemingway. The Astrolabe is a must-watch viewing these days, second to none for info and analysis. Very much appreciate it, man. Ryan says Hannity always has a hard-on for Powers. Super simp. Hannity, the reverse Cuomo. Okay. See if there's any other quotes or any other comments here. No. Okay. Let's go on to this next story. This is kind of funny. Andreessen and Elon are weighing in on this New York Times strike. I got to find the tweet. Here it is. So, New York Times tech staff threatens strike during election day crunch. Ah, the Schadenfreude. Mark Andreessen says, I stand firmly with the New York Times tech staff union. Our billionaire shit posters. We love them, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? The demands. 4-day work week, significant increases in pay, full coverage of all healthcare premiums for employees and family members, guaranteed RSU grants, and non-performance-based annual bonuses would cost over $100 million over 3 years. This is glorious. Yes, please. Leading up to the election, New York Times, please devolve into chaos. Adding to this, ban on scented products in break rooms. Would love to hear the story behind this. Unlimited break time. Accommodations for pet bereavement, mandatory trigger warnings in company meetings, more money for non-white staff to attend conferences, illegal, language that would prioritize non-citizens in the U.S. on visas in the case of layoffs, also illegal. Some good replies here. Non-performance-based bonuses, that's not a bonus, that's salary. So, Andreessen says, I particularly stand with the following demands of the New York Times Union. As Semaphore previously reported, the Guild proposed to ban scented products in break rooms, unlimited break time, and accommodations for pet bereavement, as well as mandatory trigger warnings in company meetings discussing events on the news. Times imagine that. Trigger warnings in company meetings discussing events on the news from the people responsible ostensibly for actually covering and presenting the news. These people need to be bullied into oblivion. Times management has been frustrated by proposals that would provide more money for non-white staff and others from underrepresented communities to attend conferences, and language that would prioritize non-citizens in the U.S. on visas in the case of layoffs, both of which the paper pointed out couldn't be fulfilled because they likely violate employment laws. What is the tweet about... I can't believe I can't believe the leopard ate my face, said the woman who voted for the leopard eating faces political party. That's what's happening here. And Elon, quite sensible, actually. These guys are enjoying watching their enemies devour themselves from the inside. Here's an interesting thing that I can't remember where I saw this, but I stumbled upon this recently, and this is going to be really useful for conceptualizing this sort of phenomenon in the future. The Abilene paradox is a collective fallacy in which a group of people collectively decide on a course of action that is counter to the preferences of most or all individuals in the group, while each individual believes it to be aligned with the preferences of most of the others. A common phrase related to the Abilene paradox is the desire to not rock the boat. Like in groupthink, group members jointly decide on a course of action that they would not choose as individuals. However, while in groupthink, individuals undergo self-deception and distortion of their own views, driven by, for example, not wanting to suffer in anticipation of a future they sense cannot be avoided by speaking out. In the Abilene paradox, individuals are unable to perceive the views or preferences of others or to manage an agreement. So here's an example. The name of the phenomenon comes from an anecdote that management expert Jerry B. Harvey used in his 1974 article, The Abilene Paradox, The Management of Agreement. On a hot afternoon visiting in Coleman, Texas, the family is comfortably playing dominoes on a porch until the father-in-law suggests that they take a 50-mile trip to Abilene for dinner. The wife says, sounds like a great idea. The husband, despite having reservations because the drive is long and hot, thinks that his preferences must be out of step with the group and says, sounds good to me. I just hope your mother wants to go. The mother-in-law then says, of course I want to go. I haven't been to Abilene in a long time. The drive is hot, dusty, and long. When they arrive at the cafeteria, the food is as bad as the drive. They arrive back home 4 hours later, exhausted. One of them dishonestly says, it was a great trip, wasn't it? The mother-in-law says that actually she would rather have stayed home, but went along since the other three were so enthusiastic. The husband says, I wasn't delighted to be doing what we were doing. I only went to satisfy the rest of you. The wife says, I just went along to keep you happy. I would have had to be crazy to want to go out in the heat like that. The father-in-law then says he only suggested it because he thought the others might be bored. The group sits back, perplexed that they together decided to take a trip that none of them wanted. They each would have preferred to sit comfortably, but did not admit to it when they still had the time to enjoy the afternoon. The Abilene paradox consists of 5 components. The first component refers to mutual agreement of a group that the current situation is not acceptable. However, on the individual level, the members may be satisfied with the existing setting after they have compared it with proposed alternatives. Number 2, the second component stands for ineffective communication. Within the group, when several members express considerable support for a decision because they assume it is the desire of others. This process of communication reinforces assumptions that individual thoughts are a minority in the group. Number 3, the third component of the Abilene paradox is the vocalization of group sentiment, which arose from inaccurate assumptions or incorrect interpretation of the signals given by other members. The fourth component refers to the decision-maker's reflections on the actions taken, usually in the form of questions as follows. Why did we do this? How can we justify our decision to others? The fifth component refers to the defeat of the group leader to poor decision-making in order to avoid making similar decisions in the future. There are several factors that may indicate the presence of the Abilene paradox in the decision-making process. Leaders who publicly do not fear the unknown. Such arrogance leads them to go along as they do not possess sufficient understanding of complex problems. Rather, they stick to the that sounds good to me attitude. A group with no conflict or no debate type of decision-making. What does this sound like to you? When such views are supported in the cohort, the lack of diverse opinions becomes the foundation for mismanagement of agreement. This can be visible by the emergence of the I will go along with that attitude. Overriding leaders in a strong organizational culture. A strong leader in solid organization may become a powerful asset. It may also intimidate other members of subordinates to the point of submission. This results in the inclination of supporting more dominant ideas. Lack of diversity and pluralistic perspective in a group. Homogeneous groups tend to be conformal. Such groups tend to achieve consensus rather than searching for the right decision. Source? Recognition of a dysfunctional decision-making environment. Management in this environment has lost control as the directional prerogative of management has succumbed to wanting to be liked by avoiding conflict. The feeling of a messiah in the organization and action anxiety on the part of management. When the group handles complex tasks, there's usually one person or a small cohort within the group who has required expertise to manage it in this situation. As a result, there is a tendency to acquiesce to them. And then the development of a spiral of silence in the organization. The spiral of silence occurs when one's perception of the majority opinion in the organization suppresses one's willingness to express any challenging opinion against the most visible point of view. I find this sort of thing really interesting, the way that group psychology plays itself out like this, where you can get a whole bunch of people, none of whom want to go do the thing, all of them going and doing the thing, and then each of them blaming the other people for them going and doing the thing. And in a sense, both things are true. The group was responsible for pressuring the individual into doing it, and the individual was responsible for allowing the group to do that and participating in the group doing that. It's a great both and example. Anyways, I stumbled across this and I've had it open for a few days, and I wanted to share it today especially for those of you who may be project managers or in some sort of leadership position or something like that, to be aware of this paradox, this phenomenon that can exist out there, that ultimately has to be the only way you can overcome something like this, or what this is evidence of, is weak leadership, and specifically women or feminized men in leadership positions they shouldn't be in. All right, for my tweeters out there, here's some tips. The X Algo is about to get a major update. Elon just announced he'll be updating the open-sourced Algo code this week. I've read all 36,000 lines of the current algorithm. Before the new one releases, here's a complete breakdown of the current one. First, let's talk boosts. Your post's replies are worth 13.5 times more than likes. Profile clicks are worth 12 times more than likes. Funny, seems everyone always talks about likes, but they're meaningless. Replies are everything, though. This is why Reply Guy works. And I got some strong validation of this last week when I had my one day. You know what? I'm actually going to show you guys this. I'm going to show you the analytics on my account because this is just funny. Let me back this out just a wee bit. Okay. So this is, I'll even go out to 3 months. So here was this day here, 401,000, July 16. This was the day that JD Vance was announced. Here was the 14th. So in the evening, this resets at 7 p.m. every day for me. So this big jump right here was from me tweeting about the Trump assassination attempt. And then this was the day that JD Vance was picked or was announced. The JD Vance pick was announced. And I got absolutely inundated. And then back down into here. So just for some scale, this is 400,000. This is 80,000, 75,000. And then all of a sudden, I had a couple of tweets go completely nuclear, just past the 1 million impression mark for the day, and then dropped right back off again. 23,000, 24,000 impressions so far today. Had one the other day, got up to 116. Now, this is interesting. This day where I had 116,000 impressions, this was because of 2 replies. So I saw a couple of tweets that I could tell they were starting to go viral, and I replied to them. And that's all I did. It was just a reply. And then as the main tweet took off, the replies took off with it. This day where I got 1 million impressions on these tweets, this was driven entirely by pissed off lefties spurging in the replies to my tweets. This is what tipped me off that the replies are really where it's at. If people start replying to your tweets, they get boosted big time. So if you're trying to understand the algorithm, you want replies and you want to reply to other people. The replies are where it works, which I think is great. Like you're never going to have a perfect platform. They're all going to have some sort of issue. This one is at least incentivizing engagement and back and forth. Next, being verified is literally a cheat code. If you care about growing on X, you need to get verified. Check out this major boost. So, I mean, it's $8 a month, $10 a month, something like that. I'm paying for the top tier, which is $20, $24, something like that. But if you want to get the most out of Twitter, this is the town square. This is where everything is happening. This is where all the stories begin. If you want to be able to keep your finger on the pulse of the happenings, and you want to be involved in it in any sort of way, it's silly to not pay for it. And another incentive for paying for it is it allows it to be sustained to whatever extent is possible through subscriptions versus advertisers. Because advertisers are, shout out again to Mike Benz, advertisement is the vector that the State Department and its proxies have used to get all these different platforms by the balls. So to the extent that the platform can be sustained by subscriptions, they're less likely to be compromised by advertisements. Follower to following ratio matters. If you follow way more users than are following you, your content will be deprioritized. So a great way that I've found to make up for this, I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm able to keep my following to about 10% of my followers, which is great because I have a lot of people I want to follow. But if you're trying to get through this, trying to get over that hump early on, then like a year ago I had like 1,500, 2,000 followers, something like that. I'm up to about 9,000 now. So I've grown a decent chunk over the last several months. And one of the ways that I did this to maintain that is use lists. You don't have to follow the person. You can put them on a list, and the list will be there next to your For You tab. And then you can use the list so you can follow the people. You can keep track of what they're saying. You can go through your list, open it up as a separate timeline, but you don't have to follow them. So you can kind of game the algorithm a little bit that way. Here are some more boosts and demotions your content can get. So boosts is trends, media, and news. So including pictures or videos in your tweets is good. Talking about news or using terms from the trending topics. If you're trying to grow your account, you could go take whatever the trending topics are and tweet things with those words in them. It doesn't have to be everything you tweet, but as long as you're doing this consistently, the algorithm is going to give you extra love if you're talking about the things that are already trending. Demotions. No text. So if you just tweet a picture or a video with no text associated with it, then you'll get demoted. You want to have some text. URL only. If you just tweet a link, I know a lot of you guys are out there trying to get your blogs, your Substacks, your website, or whatever off the ground. If you just tweet a URL, then no one's going to see it. You're wasting your time. Name only. I don't know exactly what name only means. I don't know what that refers to. Is this like if you're just texting, if you just someone's handle? I don't know. I've never seen someone do that. I don't know what that would be, why someone would ever do that. Links get deprioritized if they are non-news or non-media. Post outside links at your own risk. And this, I know a lot of people spurg out about this, but dude, like if you were starting a platform like this, if you were trying to grow your own platform like this, that you owned the app, one of the things you need is attention. You need eyeballs. That's like your primary metric. How many people have their eyeballs there, and how long are they staying there, and how much are they interacting with while they're there? That's what you're going to judge on. So, of course, you're going to de-emphasize people who are trying to take eyeballs from your platform to someone else's platform. So you spurg out about it all you want, but it totally makes sense. And if I ran the site, I would do the exact same thing. Just figure out a way to work around it. Here is how your account reputation is calculated. It takes into account follower to following ratio, account age, device usage, if you've been restricted or suspended, and if you're verified. Spend the $10. Using hashtags. This is a big one. I see some of you guys out there using hashtags. Quit it. Stop using hashtags. I mean, if you want to do it ironically or whatever, that's fine. But don't use a hashtag thinking that it's going to help you at all. Hashtags are dead. Not only are they ugly, but they now dock your reach. If you're still using hashtags, it's time to move on. They will demote your tweets if you include hashtags in them. Because hashtags are stupid. They look boomery. They're ugly. It just doesn't contribute to the aesthetic of the platform. It's very artificial. Have original thoughts. Don't try to use it looks like you're trying to astroturf something. Don't be a jerk. There is code to detect if you're being offensive. Use harsh, aggressive language, and you're not going to be seen on the timeline. Like everything in life, just try to be a good person, and everything will work out. Yeah, okay. All of this code can be summarized in one way. Be a good person and create content that makes X a better place. The algo is constantly changing, and I'm in the code every day. To get the right insight on the code base, make sure to keep tuned to AlexFinX, AlexFinX. Go follow him if you'd like. I'm not following him, but I thought this was an interesting thread. All right, and to wrap it up for today, here's a great video from Doug Wilson. I have my thoughts and feelings about Doug Wilson. Been aware of him for a long time. My family generally likes him, and I've generally been fond of him. I have my quibbles with him, obviously, theologically and politically, but this video here is terrific, and I want to wrap this up on a positive note before we get to Hulk. So let me play this one for you guys. No audio, huh? Well, that's peculiar. There's no reason for that. Let's unshare and then reshare. All right, let me know if it's working now. I'll give it a second here for you guys to get past the delay and catch up. I could hear it. I was sharing it. So I don't know what else could be causing it to not work. Okay, good. All right, let me play it.
The stage.
Outside of an abortion clinic. And about a woman who was stabbed, now facing charges.
In times of chaos like this, when everything is unsettled, it is easy to become unsettled yourself. The antidote to this temptation is to learn how to read the story you're in. Well, who is telling the story then? Christians believe that the author of the story is Almighty God. He turns the hearts of kings in whichever way he pleases. Not only does God turn the hearts of kings, but he also turns the heads of former presidents at just the right moment, such that the bullet grazes the ear, leaving behind the red signature of providence. This was not an example of God lurching forward to intervene in our affairs, but rather an instance of God showing us the steadiness of his hand. I'm not here remarking on the greatness of Donald Trump, but rather on the greatness of God. That remarkable event in Pennsylvania was no more providential than the breath in your lungs right this minute. God orchestrates everything all the time through his providence, but sometimes he lets us see it. The heart of unbelief wants to say that God is a blunderer and that he makes mistakes in the assignments he gives us. This is what is being said, for example, when someone claims that they are a woman trapped in a man's body, or vice versa. But if we object to that nonsense, and we do, how is it consistent to complain that God mistakenly caused us to be born into the wrong generation? You were born for this hour. All of this surrounding mayhem is our duty station. We were put here on purpose. We were written into this role by the author of the story.
There you go, guys. I appreciate you showing up today. Do me a favor and hit the like button on your way out. We got 143 still watching and 70 likes. Smash that like button. Follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. I'll make another call. Join the Kingpill Discord, kingpill.com. It's a good place to be. And I'll be back here tomorrow to cover the ABC whistleblower news. And then I've got some, I'm going to see if I have time this afternoon to cut up some clips from Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson, because I listened to their episode yesterday and they were absolutely flamethrowering. Charlie Kirk is cooking, man. He has redeemed himself more than just about anybody else in the public eye, in my opinion. So I'll see if I can get some of those things cut up to share for the show tomorrow. So I'll be back here for the Astrolabe again, and I will leave you guys with Hulk.
They're my hero. And they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough. And I said, let